السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على رسولنا محمد سيد الأولين والآخرين بعد الله رسول الله بعد الله سادة محمد وشاهد السور وما شاء الله فزاد محمد. قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم, Efendimiz sallallahu aleyhi ve sellem buyuruyor ki Ebridu bi zuhur fe inne şiddetel hal min fayhi cehennem. Peygamber sallallahu aleyhi ve sellem buyuruyor, öğle namazını serinliğine bırakınız.
Our beloved Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, recommended to, when it's time to perform dhuhr, that one should not perform dhuhr when the heat is too hot, but one should delay it for when there is more coolness.
Şüphesiz ki sıcağın şiddeti cehennemin kaynamasındandır diyor.
And our beloved Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, said that the heat we experience during noontime is an expression of the heat and the fire from hell.
Yani Peygamber o şeyler öğlen çok sıcak olurdu. Şimdi de aynı şekilde Mekke, Medine o yerlerde.
And when our beloved Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, said this was in context in regards with the environment of where he lived in the lands of Mecca and Medina, where still today there's extreme heat during noontime.
Sıcak olduğu için daha hafif olsun diye insanlara biraz geciktirirdi öğlen namazını.
Since there's this extreme heat during noontime, our beloved Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, delayed noon prayer, dhuhr prayer a little bit until there was some coolness to make it more easy for people to perform their prayer.
Daha biraz serinlesin diye. قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم إذا اشتد الحر فأبردوا بالصلاة فإن شدة الحر من فيح cehennem. Peygamber sallallahu aleyhi ve sellem buyuruyor ki sıcak şiddetlendiği zaman namazı serinliğe bırakın.
And thus our beloved Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, recommended that if when it's time for dhuhr prayer during noontime, and if it's too hot and the heat cannot be tolerated, that one should delay dhuhr prayer for a little while until there's some coolness in the air.
Şüphesiz ki sıcağın şiddeti cehennemin kaynamasındandır diyor.
Because of the heat during noontime is stemming from the heat and the fire from hell.
Yani bu yani sıcak yaz günleri bahusuz yaz günlerinde biraz orası çok aşırı sıcak oluyor çünkü.
And this holds true in summertime in the lands of Mecca and Medina when the heat and the sun is extreme during noontime.
Allah Azze ve Celle öyle hikmetiyle her şey hikmeti var.
And everything has a wisdom behind it, and Allah Almighty willed things to be this way, and it is based on Allah Almighty's wisdom that the heat in Mecca and Medina during noontime in those lands is extreme.
O işte sıcakta da biraz serinlemesini beklerlerse olur çünkü orada.
And based on the recommendations of our beloved Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, it is permissible to delay dhuhr prayer for a little time until there's some coolness in the air.
Güneş doğrudan dümdüz iniyor insana.
Because during noontime, the sun directly hits people straight.
Vakti oldu mu gölge bile olmuyor tam.
And when the sun hits people directly, there's even no shadow.
İnsanın üstünde biraz sonra gölge çıkmaya başlıyor. O vakit kılsınlar diyor.
And thus our beloved Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, recommends that one should not, if the heat is too hot for dhuhr prayer, one should just wait until there's some shadow to be seen and there's some coolness in order to perform the prayer at that time.
Kolaylık olsun diye oradaki insanlara.
And this is a recommendation of our beloved Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, which is a mercy from Allah Almighty for the people living in those areas where there is extreme heat during noontime.
Azze ve Celle'nin rahmeti merhametinden dolayı. قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم أسفر بصلاة الصبح حتى يرق مواقع نبلهم. Peygamber sallallahu aleyhi ve sellem buyuruyor ki cemaat attıkları okun yerini görünceye kadar sabah namazını ortalığın aydınlanmasıyla ağırlamasıyla kılıyor. Yani biraz şey olunca farzı gün ağarmaya başlayınca kılıyor. Onun için
And our beloved Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, recommended concerning Fajr prayer, morning prayer, that the right time or the best time to perform the first prayer of Fajr is when you shoot an arrow and you start to see that arrow, and you can see the dawn, and the dawn sheds light, and that is the recommended time to perform the obligatory part of the Fajr prayer.
Hanefi mezhebinde daha fazla onu riayet ediyorlar.
And according to the school of jurisprudence of the Hanafi school of law, it is paid attention to the best time to perform Fajr prayers according to the recommendation of our beloved Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, when to perform Fajr prayer when there's already dawn and light to be seen to some extent.
Öteki türlü de şeyler varsa, tesbihat falan varsa ancak öyle oluyor. Yani bir ezandan yarım saat falan geçiyor aradan, farza duruluyor o vakit.
And according to the school of the Hanafi school of jurisprudence and the recommendations of our beloved Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, after the call of adhan, one may do one's zikr, and until when there is some dawn and light to be seen, and one may then perform the obligatory part of the Fajr prayer.
قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم أسفر بالفجر فأعظم للأجر. Peygamber sallallahu aleyhi ve sellem buyuruyor ki sabah namazının ortalığın ağarmasıyla kılınız, çünkü sabah namazının o anda kılmanın sevabı daha büyüktür.
And our beloved Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, says that to perform Fajr prayer when there's the dawn to be seen and there's some light to be seen will bring more rewards.
Yani aynı şekilde bir de ağarmasıyla kılınan namaz daha faziletli oluyor. Ama da çok da geciktirmeyin de ki güneş yani kızıllaşmaya başlamasın.
Thus our beloved Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, recommends to perform Fajr prayer not when it's entirely dark, but when there is the dawn to be seen and when there is some light to be seen. Of course, one should not pay attention when one should not delay one's Fajr prayer, so one should be very careful that it's not the time when the sun rises when one performs Fajr prayer.
Kerahat vaktine gelmeden önce kılması lazım.
Thus, the Fajr prayer must be completed before the critical time of sunrise approaches, when it's forbidden to perform prayer.
قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم أعتم بهذه الصلاة فإنكم قد فضلتم بها على سائر الأمم ولم تصلها أمة قبلكم. Peygamber sallallahu aleyhi ve sellem buyuruyor ki bu namazı, yani namazı o yatsı namazını kastederek geciktirerek kılınız. Çünkü siz bununla diğer ümmetlerin ümmetlere üstün kılındınız.
Our beloved Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, said concerning Isha prayer, then it is recommended to delay Isha prayer a bit.
Sizden önce hiç kimse bir ümmet kılmadı.
And it is the Isha prayer that distinguishes the Muslim community, because the former people have not been gifted the Isha or night prayer as it has been given to the Muslim community, the Ummah of our beloved Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him.
Yatsı namazını daha kararmaya, hava daha fazla kararırsın diye geciktiririz diyor Peygamberimiz sallallahu aleyhi ve sellem.
And thus our beloved Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, recommends to perform Isha prayer when things when it becomes very dark outside, and he thus recommends to delay Isha prayer more, so that it becomes even darker outside, and there's more blessings to when one performs Isha at a later stage.
Burada başka ümmetlerin üzerine üstün kılınma sebebi olmuş yatsı namazı. Başka ümmetlerde hiç kimseye kılmadı diyor.
And Isha prayer is a form of prayer that is a special gift to the Muslims, and which has not been granted. This type of prayer has not been granted to previous people.
Akşama kadar akşam kılıp ondan sonra namaz gündüz daha akşama kadar, akşam namazdan sonra namaz yoktu.
Former people, they would perform prayer up until evening time, and then after evening prayer they would not perform prayer up until morning time.
Biz Allah'a şükür ümmet Muhammediye verilmiş bir namazdır.
But being part of the community of our beloved Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, enabled us and allowed us to perform Isha prayer, which is a gift of Allah Almighty to the Muslims.
Başka ümmetlere üstünlüktür bu.
And thus Isha prayer is what distinguishes the Muslim community from other groups.
قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم بادر بصلاة المغرب قبل طلوع النجم. Peygamber sallallahu aleyhi ve sellem buyuruyor ki yıldızlar doğmadan önce akşam namazını kılmakta acele ediniz.
And concerning Maghrib prayer, evening prayer, our beloved Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, recommended that one should hasten to perform evening Maghrib prayer, and one should perform Maghrib prayer before the stars are seen in the sky.
Onun için akşam namazı acele edilir.
That is why the evening Maghrib prayer is performed as soon as possible once it's evening time.
Onu yıldız çıkmadan, yıldızlar görülmeden önce güneş battıktan sonra ezan okunduğu vakit hemen o namaza kılmaya acele etmek lazım.
And thus one should as quickly as possible perform Maghrib prayer as soon as the sun sets, right before the stars are to be seen in the sky.
Bu da işte Allah'a şükür ehl-i sünnet vel cemaatın mezhebidir.
And we are thankful to Allah Almighty to follow the Ahl Sunnah vel Jama'ah school, and we are thankful that as being part of the Ahl Sunnah vel Jama'ah, we're paying attention to these recommendations of our beloved Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him.
Onu başka türlü anlayan mezhepler var. Yıldız çıkmadan namaz kılmazlar.
And there are other groups who interpret these words of our beloved Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, differently.
Bozmazlar.
And they do not perform their prayers before the stars are seen, or they do not break their fasts.
قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم بكر بالصلاة في يوم الغيم فإن من ترك صلاة العصر حبط عمله. Peygamber sallallahu aleyhi ve sellem buyuruyor ki bulutlu günde namazı kılmakta acele edin.
And our beloved Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, recommends that if there are clouds and one cannot determine the right time of prayer, one should perform one's prayer as soon as possible.
Zira ikindi namazını terk eden kişinin ameli boşa gider.
And this applies to Asr prayer, and if there are too many clouds and one cannot distinguish the right time, one should perform Asr prayer as quickly as possible, and should be careful about not missing Asr prayer, because if you miss Asr prayer, then your deeds will have been for nothing.
Çünkü bulut olunca eskiden tabii saatler falan yoktu. Günün ağarmasına güneşe bakıp kalınırdı.
And this of course applies to former times when there was no watch, and people would not exactly know when the right time was, and of course, they would look at the sun in order to determine which prayer to perform. But if the weather was too cloudy and one could not see the sky or see the sun, then it became difficult to determine the right time. And therefore, our beloved Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, recommended to perform Asr prayer as soon as possible in order not to miss it.
Daha bulutlu olunca vakit oldu mu olmadı mı ya vakit geçebilir.
Because if the weather was too cloudy, one may have been running the risk of missing Asr prayer because one could not determine whether the sun is still there or whether the sun has already set and one has missed Asr prayer.
Için ikindi namazını acele edip kılın diyor Peygamberimiz sallallahu aleyhi ve sellem.
And therefore our beloved Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, recommended to perform Asr prayer as quickly as possible.
Onu terk eden ameli boşa gider, heba olur ameli.
Because the one who misses Asr prayer must know that his deeds will have been for nothing.
قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم الشفق الحمرة فإذا غاب الشفق وجبت الصلاة. Peygamber sallallahu aleyhi ve sellem buyuruyor ki kırmızı şafak kaybolduğu zaman yatsı namazı vakti gelmiş olur.
Our beloved Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, said about the time when it is right time to perform Isha prayer is when the sun has set. The moment when the sun sets, there's redness in the sky, there's twilight, and at the moment when darkness overtakes this redness of the sky, then it's the right time to perform Isha prayer.
Bu akşamdan sonra kırmızılık oluyor gökyüzünde.
After sunset, there's some redness in the sky, there's twilight, dusk.
O kaybolunca yatsının vakti girmiş olur.
And when that redness in the sky disappears and darkness takes over, then that's the time of Isha prayer.
Onu kılın diyor Peygamber Efendimiz sallallahu aleyhi ve sellem.
And thus our beloved Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, recommends that this is then the time when to perform Isha prayer, when the dusk and when the twilight turns into darkness.
Burada bir nokta vardı. Bu yerkürenin kuzey tarafında yaz vakti ya hiç şey olmuyor, gece olmuyor.
And there is this question of what to do when one is in the north of the globe, when there is no actual nighttime and when the sun never sets.
Ya gece olsa bile hep aydınlık kalıyor.
Or when nighttime comes, the sun remains.
Bir cemaat vardı, diyordu ki yatsı vakti girmedi, yatsı yıkılmıyorlardı.
And there was a group who then said, since the sun has not set, since there's no darkness, the time for Isha prayer has not come. And they would then constantly not pray Isha prayer.
Bu olmaz.
And this is not correct.
Yatsı öyle yerlerde ona göre ayarlayacaklar.
In places as such where the sun never sets, people need to adjust and pray Isha accordingly.
1,5 saat, 2 saatler nasıl öteki taraflarda kılınıyorsa akşamdan sonra.
So they may, after Maghrib prayer, perform Isha prayer 1.5 hours later or 2 hours later, based on, for example, a place where there is actual nighttime.
Ezan okuyup kılacaklar.
And even though the sun may not be setting in those places, they must adjust themselves according to places nearby where there is actual sunset and nighttime, and then follow that and recite azan.
Sabaha kadar aydınlıktır. Öyle kırmızılık var gökyüzünde.
And these are exceptional places because there will be never fully darkness. There may be twilight and redness in the sky, but never the darkness of the night. But this does not mean that you cannot perform Isha prayer. No, you must follow the places nearby and you based on their timing, perform Isha prayer, and therefore after Maghrib prayer, for example, wait 1.5 hours or 2 hours, and then perform Isha prayer.
Hiç karanlık olmaz. O Mayıs'tan sonra başlıyor ta Eylül'e kadar 3-5 ay öyle gidiyor.
And then it starts during May up until September, 3-5 months. In those places, it happens that the sun never sets actually.
Girmediği namazı kılmamak, farzı bırakmak oluyor.
It is not correct in those areas to not perform the prayer of Isha. If you do not perform Isha prayer and say there is no sunset, then you actually omitted an obligatory prayer.
Vakit vebale giriyor.
And you will be held accountable for having omitted that obligatory prayer, because you should have prayed Isha even though there is no sunset, based on the timing of a different place where there is a sunset.
Peygamberimiz sallallahu aleyhi ve sellem'in daha önce de söylediği gibi oruç için de aynı şekilde bazı yerlerde oruç bütün gün aydınlık oluyor.
And this also applies to fasting. In some places, again, the sun never sets, and this does not mean that you cannot fast. This does not mean that you cannot break your fast in the evening.
Ya bütün gece aydınlık oluyor, gündüz karanlık oluyor. Ona göre ayarlayacaklar.
And there may be places where there's sun during the nighttime and there's only darkness during the daytime. But regardless of what the circumstances there are, you need to adjust your fasting accordingly and start your fasting and break your fasting as you would be doing in a place where there's regular time.
Namaz da aynı şekildedir.
And this also applies to prayer.
قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم صلوا صلاة المغرب مع سقوط الشمس بادر بها طلوع النجم. Peygamber sallallahu aleyhi ve sellem buyuruyor ki güneş battıktan sonra akşam namazını kılın.
Our Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, said, once the sun sets, perform Maghrib evening prayer.
Yıldızlar doğmadan önce de kılmakta acele edin.
And try to perform Maghrib prayer as soon as possible before the stars of the night are to be seen.
Yani yıldız gözükmeden önce akşamı hemen kılın diyor.
One should perform Maghrib prayer before the stars are to be seen in the sky.
Peygamber sallallahu aleyhi ve sellem. قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم عجلوا صلاة النهار في يوم غيم وأخروا المغرب. Peygamber sallallahu aleyhi ve sellem gene buyuruyor ki gündüz namazını 12 günde kılmakta, yani ikindi namazını orada yaptı, hemen kılın, bırakmayın. Dediğimiz gibi o saat yoktu, yoktu.
And again, our beloved Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, emphasizes the importance of performing Asr prayer, and that one should perform Asr prayer as soon as possible, because in former times they did not have clocks or watches, and it may easily have happened that they cannot determine the time, and before they realized, the sun may have already set. So he paid special importance to Asr prayer to perform it as soon as possible.
Şimdiki ona ihtiyacı yok ama gene de Peygamber Efendimiz sünneti olarak acele kılmakta daha iyi olur.
And even though these days we do have clocks and watches, we should follow the example and the recommendations of our beloved Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, and thus perform Asr prayer as soon as possible in order not to run the danger of missing it.
Akşam namazını da geciktirin. Bulutlu olduğu gün, yani belli olmuyor, o vakit görmüyorlardı. Ama şimdi artık ihtiyaç yoktur o şeye.
But when it comes to, for example, Maghrib prayer, our beloved Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, recommended that if the weather is too cloudy and one cannot clearly determine whether it's already evening time or not, he recommended to rather wait and postpone and delay a little bit, because one cannot clearly determine in the cloudy weather whether the sun has actually set. But today we do not have these difficulties. We have clocks and watches by which we can unambiguously determine the prayer time.
قال رسول يحرم فيه الطعام وتحل فيه الصلاة وفجر تحرم فيه الصلاة ويحل فيه الطعام. Peygamber sallallahu aleyhi ve sellem buyuruyor ki iki fecirden, yani fecir dediği melekten sabah ya akşam vaktidir. Birinci, yemek yemeyi haram kılan ve namazı helal kılan. O sabah namazı vakti. O tan çıktı, yani tan dekti, ışık. Onda oruç için yemek haram kılınıyor.
And it is the morning prayer during dawn time, which our beloved Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, described as follows. He said that the dawn prayer is the prayer when it is forbidden to eat but permitted to pray, by which he meant that when it's dawn time and time for morning prayer, for Fajr prayer, and somebody's fasting, one can no longer eat.
Yemek, imsak vakti olmuş oluyor. Namaz helal dedi, yani sabah namazı girmiştir. O namazı kılınabiliyor.
Because after the time of imsak, it is forbidden to eat for the one who fasts, and therefore the prayer of Fajr has been characterized by our beloved Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, as the time when it is forbidden to eat and permitted to pray.
Fecir'dir, fecr sadık. İkincisi ise namaz haram kılan, yemek yemeyi helal kılan fecirdir. Fecr kazıdır. Bu da akşam için söylüyor. Akşam yapınca olunca o tan gidince karanlık oluyor. O vakit yemek yemeye yapıyor. İkincisi ise namazı haram kılan ve yemeği helal kılan fecirdir. Allah inşallah bunda daha sonra bir bakıp da ne olduğunu tam anlayamadık.
And there is a second time described by our beloved Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him. It's the time of twilight, when it is prohibited to pray but permitted to eat. And inshallah, we will need to look at this closer later in order to understand that correctly, what is meant by prohibited to pray and permitted to eat.
قال رسول صلى الله عليه وسلم الفجر فجران فأما الفجر الذي يكون كذنب السرحان فلا يحل الصلاة ولا يحرم الطعام وأما الفجر الذي يذهب مبسطين في الأفق فإنه يحل الطعام يحل الصلاة ويحرم الطعام. Peygamber sallallahu aleyhi ve sellem söylüyor. İki fecir şafak vakti vardır ki kurt kuyruğu gibi olan fecr kazip, yani birinci fecir namazı helal kılmadığı gibi yemeği de haram kılmaz. Yani tam çıkmış olmuyor, yani o imsak vakti gelmeden önce az bir ışık gibi bir şey gözüküyor. Ancak ufukta uzanmasına giden fecir, yani fecr sadık, doğru olan namaz imsak vakti, namazı halal kıldığı gibi yemeği haram kılar. Yani oruçta sabah namazı vakti girmiş oluyor. O vakit namaz kılabiliyorsun. Ondan önce sabah namazı daha vakti girmemiş oluyor.
And our beloved Prophet again describes the time of Fajr prayer as the time when it is permitted to pray and prohibited to eat. And he says this in context of fasting, that if somebody wants to fast, one can eat until the time of imsak. But when it's dawn time, one is no longer allowed to eat, but it is then permitted to pray, because during dawn time, it's the time of Fajr prayer. And thus, our beloved Prophet described the Fajr prayer time as the time when one is permitted to pray, but prohibited to eat, meaning one can no longer eat if one's fasting on that day after imsak, when the day is dawning.
Yemekte imsak vakti olduğu için artık yemek haramdır.
And when the Fajr time has come and it's dawn, then if somebody wants to fast, one can then no longer eat.
Ramazan'da. Başka vakit tabii yiyebiliyorsunuz da.
And this applies to the times of fasting, to Ramadan, for example. Of course, in other times, you can still eat during dawn time.
Ramazan'da haramdır.
But during Ramadan, it is forbidden to eat in dawn time.
صدق رسول الله فيما قال كما قال زيادة أشرف النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم وعلى أصحابه الكرام وإلى أرواح جميع الأنبياء والمرسلين قدماء شرائعهم وإلى أرواح الأئمة الأربعة وإلى أرواح مشايخنا في طريقة النقشبندية العالية خاصة إمام الطريقة الدواوس الخليفة الخواجة بهاء الدين محمد ويسير البخاري سيدنا عبد الخالق الجواني وعلى شيخ شرف الدين داوساني وعلى شيخ محمد ناظم عبد الحقاني وسائر ساداتنا والصديقين ومن حفظات وجوار حسين الطوفي حمدي ورفقاء حجم صفة ترى بالجملة من زنجيش مشرف için şehit şuhada için من geçmiş Allah تعالى الفاتحة